Imagine someone who reaches an important position at work, but the past he got wrong comes back to him, and he dies because of it. But he gets a second chance and goes back in time to change his whole life. Will he be able to fix his past mistakes? Let's find out what happened to Dr. Park. Warning: this content is a work of fiction. This video may contain scenes of fictional violence with no basis in reality. All events and characters are products of imagination. The content is presented for entertainment and analysis purposes only. Viewing is recommended for those over 18 years of age. Our story begins in front of a hospital, and we see 3 people standing. One of them is the hospital director. His name is Kim. He says to our protagonist, Park, "All right, now, take care of yourself." Our protagonist replies, bowing before him, "Yes, director." Kim continues, "Have you prepared the speech for your new position as director of the center?" Our protagonist tells him he has prepared it. A car arrives beside them, and our protagonist opens the door for them, and he says, "The bald man, all right, now go home and get some rest." Our protagonist thanks them, and the car drives away, leaving him behind. It's raining, so he smiles, our protagonist, and says to himself, "Finally, of course, everyone." Our protagonist is a doctor at a hospital affiliated with Myeong-Sudong University, and this hospital is very advanced and has a very good reputation. But in reality, it only accepts doctors from the elite class. Anyone not a graduate of Myeong-Sudong University is immediately rejected as a doctor at the hospital. But despite all this, our protagonist came from a regular university and was considered the first person of his level to hold the position of director of the heart center at the hospital. Of course, our protagonist worked hard to reach this stage, and he knew what he was doing to achieve success quickly. For example, surgeries for ordinary people. He didn't focus on them. He always flattered the hospital director and the elite people to win them over. And if there was any doctor who tried to get ahead of him, he would stand in his way. The matter could even lead to the firing of that doctor from the entire hospital. And our protagonist, everyone, is a simple man, the son of a farmer, who strived to succeed no matter what the cost. And here he stands, our protagonist, looking at the sky and saying, "Finally, now we go." To the car that left, and he says to the bald man, "Director Kim, why did you choose Park? I understand he's a suitable successor to Cho, but isn't it dangerous for you to appoint him as director of the heart center? He's a very ambitious man." Kim replies, "That's exactly what made him the perfect candidate for this position." The bald man asks him to clarify his idea. So Kim continues, "Park is a hunting dog who wants to be human, and he's always ready to do anything to win approval, even if his reward is a small piece of meat. And the director of a center, that position will be like a small piece of meat for him. And starting from now, all we'll do is take the prey that he hunts. This kid has a knack for hunting, and he'll be our winning card." The bald man says, "Okay, but what if he gets arrogant and tries to reach a higher place with his masters?" Kim replies, "Don't worry, a dog will always be a dog, and in his entire life, he will never become human again." The next morning at the hospital, we see 2 doctors in the hallway, and one of them says, the way he walks around, so full of himself. After becoming the center director, it makes me hate him. The other one replies, "But he didn't come to the director's birthday party last time, did he? Anyway, no matter what he does to improve his image, he'll always be an outsider here." And here, our protagonist comes from behind them and says, "Good morning." They are both shocked, and our protagonist continues, "No problem, guys. Continue your conversation." They are both startled, and one of them says, "What's this?" "The star of the hospital, Dr. Park." "There's no one in this hospital like you, doctor." Our protagonist replies, "How can I be a star when the department heads are here?" "You're exaggerating, guys." The doctor continues, "Well, department head Park. Center director. We're busy and we're going to get to our work." They leave him and walk away. So our protagonist looks at them, and at that moment, a doctor named Jisoo, who is our protagonist's colleague and friend, arrives and says, "Busy? Oh, what a lame excuse. They're jealous of you because you became a center director." Park replies, "When people look at someone as an outsider, they'll always look at them that way. And you know how this story goes. If it were up to them, they wouldn't have allowed me to enter here in the first place. Jisoo says, yeah, well, they're graduates of the university. They treat graduating from the university like it's a royal medal. But why are you smiling like that? Our protagonist thinks to himself, it doesn't matter. Let them look at me like that, as long as they can look. Because in the end, I'll take them down one by one. But at the right time, after a while, we see our protagonist entering the director's office. Kim, shouting and saying, why, director? Kim asks him what's wrong, so our protagonist continues, you know very well how hard I've worked for this. And that patient is mine. Of course, everyone, the patient our protagonist is talking about is the chairman of the Han Financial Group, which is one of the largest groups in the country. And this man was the reason our protagonist reached the top, and our protagonist can never lose him. Kim says, you mean the chairman, who's having a heart transplant? I know, you bet everything on him. Park replies, as long as you know, director, why would you let Professor Junsu be the one to do the surgery? Kim replies, Dr. Park, there's no need to get so worked up. This surgery, the local and international medical community is focused on it. And don't forget that the patient is the chairman of the largest financial group in the country. Our protagonist shouts again, and that's exactly why I worked with all my effort and took care of him until this moment. So why? Kim continues, it's true you gave it everything, and because of your efforts, we reached this stage. But your role is over now. You made the right pass, and someone else will come and score the goal. Our protagonist drops to his knees and says, Director, I've sacrificed my entire career for this surgery, and I'm sure it will succeed. Please give me this chance. You know that in the cardiac surgery department, no one has experience like me. The director replies, honestly, you have great skills, but that doesn't mean you're the best. Isn't that right? Professor Junsu has performed this operation 3 times before, and it was successful. And also, he's a graduate of Johns Hopkins University. And on top of all that, when a professor from that university succeeds in surgery on the chairman of a group, it will be much better, won't it? I thought you understood the situation, but it seems I was mistaken. You're just an obedient dog that follows its master's orders and does what's required of it without objecting. I don't want you to bring this up again, because I don't want to lose another important job. Understand, the director leaves, leaving our protagonist alone in the office, trembling and shouting. Time passes and we see our protagonist standing in the street, smoking a cigarette, and at that moment a man comes and says to him, Sir, did you call for a taxi? Our protagonist gets in the car and sits, with his hands on his face. So he asks him, the driver, if something is bothering him. He replies, life is so tiring. I thought my efforts would make a difference, but nothing happened. So why live life this way? So the driver asks him, do you feel regret? Park replies, yes, I regret it very much. If I got a chance to go back to the past, I wouldn't hesitate. The driver continues, the past. Yes, I understand you. If I could go back to the past, I also wouldn't hesitate for a moment to do so. And here, the driver steps on the gas, so our protagonist gets scared, and he continues, the driver, regret? You wasted the life of a 6-year-old girl, and all this for the success in your head. And now you dare to say you regret it. Our protagonist asks him, terrified, who are you? The driver replies, I can't believe it. You forgot Yunji, the patient you had 3 years ago. And here, our protagonist's memory comes back, and he remembers the little girl who was waiting for a heart transplant. And on that day, our protagonist stole the heart that was meant for her and gave it to the granddaughter of one of the congressmen. Of course, that's what caused Yunji to die. So our protagonist screams. They said that, even if I had operated on Yunji, the chance of success was almost 0. The driver replies, a chance, even if it was 1%. Wasn't that still hope? And that hope is what families cling to. But you crushed that hope under your foot. And here, the driver opens the door, so our protagonist screams, do you think you can escape from what you're about to do? The driver replies, since the day Yunji died, I haven't seen any meaning in life. And if you have any chance to live a new life, then don't repeat the same sins. Doctor, you bastard. He jumps the driver at that moment from the car, and the car keeps moving on the bridge. And here it turns and falls off the bridge into the water. Time passes, and our protagonist hears someone say, "Doctor, the blood pressure is still dropping." He asks, "The doctor, how low has it dropped?" She answers, "A nurse, to 75. No, it's 65. The doctor gets confused and says, "So what do we do now?" Our protagonist says to himself, "What do you mean? What will you do? Now that the blood pressure is dropping, you have to give a dopamine shot immediately. What is happening? Did I die?" We see our protagonist in the emergency room, and the doctor and nurses are beside him, and one of them says, "Inject dopamine, doctor." The doctor replies to her, "Yes, inject dopamine." And quickly, he thinks the protagonist, if his blood pressure stops at 65, he'll lose consciousness. At any moment, he'll have a cardiac tamponade, which is when fluid builds up around the heart and prevents the heart from filling with blood. And now they must perform a pericardiocentesis, which is a needle they use to drain the fluid from around the heart. So the nurse says, "Stop. The patient is going into cardiac arrest." The doctor is startled and says, "What do I do now?" Our protagonist says in his head, "An adrenaline shot, and then atropine." The doctor continues, "Yes, right. Give him a shot quickly. Adrenaline, and then atropine." And she says, the nurse, that the blood pressure is dropping further. So he tells her to get the defibrillator. He starts giving him shocks and increases the charge, but there's no result. And here, our protagonist says in his head, "You idiot, if you had done the operation the right way, I would still be alive now." What an absurd ending. Our protagonist closes his eyes and opens them again. He finds himself in another place, and he's wondering what just happened. And if what just happened was just a dream, he puts his hand in his pocket, pulls out a pager, and looks at it, surprised. Then he hears someone's voice saying, "Sleeping on the job? That must feel nice. Park, wake up. They need you in the ER. If they see you sleeping like this, you'll get yelled at badly." Our protagonist looks at him, surprised, and says, "Who are you?" The doctor continues, "Are you still dreaming or what? I'm your buddy, Jisoo." Park is shocked and says to him, "Are you really Jisoo?" And he replies, "Yes, unless you know another Jisoo other than me." Our protagonist thinks that Jisoo is over 40, but now he looks like he's in his youth. Jisoo continues, "What's wrong with you? Do you want me to explain it to you more clearly? You're at Myeong-Sudong University Hospital, and you're the medical intern, Park." He sits, our protagonist, on the bed and says to himself, "What's happening?" And he says to Jisoo, "I'm an intern." He replies, "Yes, you idiot. Stop what you're doing, acting like you own the place. Get up, let's go." Our protagonist thinks that Jisoo, who graduated from Myeong-Sudong University's medical school, is the only person in the hospital who he considers his real friend, because he's a kind man with a good soul. He thinks that everything that happened was just a dream, and he looks at the date on the wall and sees that they're in the year 98, which is the year our protagonist was an intern. He sees that this dream has a lot of details, ridiculously so, and here he hits him, Jisoo, on the head and says, "Do you want me to carry you? There? Let's go, hurry up. Does your head hurt now?" Our protagonist thinks that in dreams, nothing is supposed to hurt him. After a while, we see he and Jisoo are walking in the hallway, and our protagonist is looking around, and he says to himself, "This is just like when I was an intern. I'm going to believe that this is real." Then a doctor standing in the hallway says, "You're here to have fun, aren't you?" Our protagonist is surprised when he sees him, because this is Young, and Young always caused problems with him. From the moment our protagonist chose to specialize in surgery, the heart, you went straight for the heart. It's becoming a paradise. I see you swaggering around. Are you going to stand there? Come on, run. Jisoo runs, and our hero is thinking that this dream is very realistic in all its details. And according to his memories, the place he is about to enter is the emergency room. And of course, everyone, when people hear emergency room, they imagine it's a very tense place, because the line between life and death is a thin one. But reality isn't like what's portrayed by the media at all, because those who arrive as patients in an ambulance, by ambulance, are only 30%. The rest don't arrive alive. but people generally walk into the emergency room directly. And in this hospital, the department has 40 beds and about 10 doctors working a single shift. And when the emergency room is crowded, the interns feel like they're on a battlefield. Here, a woman grabs our hero's hand and says to him in a tired voice, "Doctor, please help me." Our hero looks at her. She's holding her neck. He asks her what's wrong. She tells him, while coughing, that a while ago, she was drinking fish soup. Our hero asks her to open her mouth, and after checking, he says, "Did you register at the reception?" The girl replies, "No, I was waiting outside. But as soon as I saw you, I came right in." Park replies, "There's a fishbone in your throat. If you haven't registered at the reception, you can go back home and have your family help you. Take it out." The girl is surprised and asks, "Can I really take it out myself at home?" Our hero gets closer and whispers in her ear, "If you have it removed here, you'll pay 100,000 won. But if you go back home and remove it yourself, then you won't pay anything. The decision is ultimately up to you." The girl replies, "So what's the deal? Is it safe? I mean, is there no danger?" Our hero smiles at her and says, "If you have medical tweezers at home, you can use them. There might be some inflammation, but after you remove it, you can go to an ear, nose, and throat clinic to get checked." The girl thanks him, and Park continues, "If something like this happens to you in the future, it's better to go to a clinic rather than the emergency room." At that moment, a doctor comes up from behind. Park kicks his leg and says, "Are you crazy? What are you doing?" This doctor's name is Song. Park replies to him, "This patient has a fishbone in her throat. The situation isn't serious, so I told her to go home." Song says to him, "Are you out of your mind, kid? What if she gets esophagitis?" Our hero thinks that a fishbone doesn't cause a bacterial or viral infection. And, of course, he has a lot of experience, considering he was the director of a medical center. But he remembers Song, and what gets to him? So our hero bows before him and says, "I'm sorry, doctor." Song is surprised by our hero and tells him, "Of course you should be sorry. Let me make something clear." And in turn just follows orders. That's it. Understood. Our hero agrees with his words and thinks to himself, this guy gets a kick out of seeing the people in front of him, bowing down to him. But these details are exactly like what happened in the past. What is this strange dream? And here, they hear someone yelling, "Leave me alone. Is this a real hospital? They said it was a minor injury, but I'm in pain. Where's the doctor? Get out of here." Our hero and Song were looking at the patient, but suddenly, our hero is shocked when he sees a timer on the patient's head, and above it is written, "Remaining lifespan." Song approaches the patient and tells him, "Sir, you can't be doing this." He gets closer, grabs his hand, and tells our hero to hold him as well. As our hero holds the patient's hand, he asks himself if he's the only one seeing the number on the man's head. Here, our hero feels the patient's pulse and realizes it's dangerously fast. He then looks at the patient's face and says to himself, "These are symptoms of paroxysmal cardiac arrhythmia." Paroxysmal, in this condition, folks, is when the heartbeat is irregular and there are very frequent attacks. The man screams, "Do something. I feel like my back is being torn apart." Our hero thinks, but the man's voice isn't normal. This means he has a problem with his laryngeal nerve. There could be an expansion of the aorta, and its size has increased, which is what's pressing on the nerve. And if they don't act fast, the man won't live for more than 12 hours. And indeed, that's the time displayed on the man's head. And here, our hero says to Song, "Doctor, I think this patient has a serious vascular problem." Song replies, "What nonsense are you talking? I told you." And in turn just listens to me, without arguing. Stop the useless chatter, and hold his hand correctly. Our hero tries to speak, but Song shuts him up, telling him that if he keeps talking so much, he should just leave. Our hero looks at him, furious, and thinks to himself, "You're just an ignorant kid. I was the head of cardiothoracic surgery, and the center's director, too. And this patient needs surgery immediately, but no one is listening to me." And here, our hero remembers something and runs off. The nurse yells, "Doctor, the patient's blood pressure is dropping fast. It's down to 70. Song thinks to himself, "What happened? If the patient goes into cardiac arrest, then we'll be in trouble. What do I do? He tells a nurse to give him a shot of epinephrine. He looks around and remembers that Juno was here just a moment ago. He had sent Jisoo to find a cardiothoracic surgeon, but he hasn't returned yet. And Park was here too, but he disappeared. The nurse says, "Doctor, the blood pressure isn't stabilizing. It's down to 65. Song is shocked, not knowing what to do. At that moment, he hears a cardiothoracic surgeon saying, "Dilute the norepinephrine in saline and give him another injection." And arriving with the doctor are Jisoo and Juno. After Song follows the doctor's instructions, the patient's blood pressure starts to rise again, but slowly. The professor approaches the patient, examining him and saying, "Can you hear me? If you can hear me, move your fingers." And indeed, the patient moves his finger. Here, the professor says, "Doutor Júnior, prep the operating room quickly and notify the anesthesia team to get ready immediately." Juno asks him if he'll be performing the surgery himself. The professor says, "What year is he in?" Júnior answers that he's the chief resident, meaning he's in his 3rd year of specialization. The professor replies, "Did you prescribe this patient a muscle relaxant?" Juno says, "Yes." The professor continues, "How can a chief resident confuse the difference between muscle pain and aortic dissection?" Juno gets flustered and says, "But the patient's back was covered in many patches." The professor replies, "So we should put pain relief patches on a patient with myocardial infarction. There's no time to scold you. We need to do a synthetic vascular graft. That's why you need to quickly find a cardiopulmonary bypass machine technician." Juno replies, "But right now, Dr. Han is on vacation, and Dr. Mark isn't in today." The professor replies, "What? We can't proceed without operating the extracorporeal circulation machine." At that moment, our hero arrives and says, "Professor, I brought Dr. Mark with me. You can start the operation now." Song yells and says, "Where have you been all this time?" The professor raises his hand and tells him, "Wait, you were able to get Dr. Mark?" Our hero replies, "Yes, he wasn't answering his phone, so I went to look for him myself." Of course, our hero knew that Dr. Mark would be drinking on his day off, and nobody would be able to find him. He was very difficult to deal with. And here, the professor tells the professor, Dr. Mark, to prepare the cardiopulmonary bypass machine. The professor asks our hero, "Why you want to look for Dr. Mark himself?" And our hero replies, "I anticipated you'd be performing a vascular graft surgery, so I thought I should find Dr. Mark and bring him here." The professor asks, "So you knew the patient had an aortic rupture?" Park replies, "Yes, but I wasn't certain. The symptoms he had seemed to be from high blood pressure, and he said he felt a pain like a knife stabbing him in the back. When I checked his pulse, it was clear there was a problem, and his heartbeat wasn't regular. That's why I suspected an aortic rupture." The professor, surprised, asks for his name, and our hero says his name is Park. He asks him again what year of residency he's in. Our hero is surprised and gets flustered, not knowing how to answer. And here, Juno points at him and says, "Professor, he's just an intern." The professor hits him on the head and says, "So he's an intern, and he figured out more than you, the chief resident. From now on, you are forbidden from entering any operating room I'm in." Understood. Juno apologizes and glares at our hero, seething with rage. But our hero pays him no mind. The professor continues, "And you? What department are you an intern in?" Our hero says he's in the emergency department. The professor continues, "All right, I can't talk to you right now. After I finish the surgery, come my office so we can talk." Our hero agrees and thinks to himself, "Professor, Hyun wants to talk to me." After the operation, we see our hero standing in front of the professor's office, knocking on the door. He enters, and the professor tells him to sit down because he wants to ask a few questions. Our hero replies that he's ready to answer. He feels nervous because they are alone. Professor Hyun asks, "I'll get straight to the point. How did you know the patient had an aortic rupture?" Our hero replies, "First, his excess weight and flushed face indicated he has high blood pressure, and when I took his pulse, I felt something was irregular with his blood pressure." The professor says, but that's normal for a patient with high blood pressure. Park continues, true, but after putting all these things together, along with the patches on his back, I suspected an aortic rupture. I learned that ascending aortic dissections cause a stabbing pain, just like the patient was feeling. The professor continues, but that's not enough to diagnose an aortic rupture. Our hero continues, yes, I also noticed a hoarseness in his voice, so I suspected a swelling, and the aorta was pressing on the nerves, responsible for the vocal cords. With all of these symptoms, I concluded that the patient had an aortic aneurysm, and that's what caused the rupture. The professor looks at him, the professor, shocked, and laughs out loud. Our hero wonders if he said something wrong. The professor has our hero's file in front of him and says, you're from Kongjun University, aren't you? Your academic record is excellent. Isn't Professor Bill from the neurology department at your university? He's an old friend of mine. He's got a terrible temper. How did you ever manage to pass his class? Anyway, you'll be choosing your specialty soon. Have you given any thought? Park replies, I want to work in cardiothoracic surgery. The professor is surprised why. Everyone tries to avoid it because it doesn't bring in a lot of money. Why are you so insistent on it? Our hero says to himself, well, what else can I do? It's what I know best. The professor stands up, approaches him, and our hero answers, cardiothoracic surgery is related to critical cases. Every second is vital. The professor cuts him off and says, no, I don't want an answer like that. I'm asking for the real reason, not some textbook answer. Do you know why they use the shape of a heart as a symbol of love? Our hero remembers when he stood before him in his past life. Back then, he had said, I thought it was because its shape resembles a real heart. And the professor had replied at the time, no, that's incorrect. But long ago, people believed that love comes from the heart. Do you know the reason I'm telling you this? You have the hands, but you don't have the heart. And in your eyes, I see nothing but ambition. You're drowning in your obsession with success. But a heart surgeon doesn't operate with his hands. He operates with his heart. That is the philosophy I believe in. And that's why you are unfit to be the head of cardiothoracic surgery. Here, our hero returns to the present and the professor's question. And he says, I don't want to be a doctor who heals with his hands. I want to heal with my heart. The professor pats his shoulder and says, do you like the game of Go? Our hero is surprised by the question and says, yes, I can play a little. Of course, everyone, our hero used to practice that game a lot, but the professor never once asked him to play with him. And here, the professor continues, good. You have tomorrow off, right? You're coming to my house. My wife makes an excellent cold soy milk noodle soup. You'll come and eat with us, okay? Our hero accepts the professor's invitation and time passes. We see our hero walking back home, thinking about when he saw the timer above the man's head. He asked himself what that was he saw. Even now, he can't believe it. And even if he was hallucinating, it was strange because he didn't see the numbers on any other patient. He arrives near his house and puts his hand in the planter box, takes out the key, and says to himself, this is the same place I used to leave the key. Could it be? He realizes he has gone back in time. He enters the house and looks in the mirror, feeling like everything has started over from scratch. He changes his clothes and lies down on the bed. He says to himself, if this is really the past, then what should I do? As soon as he falls asleep, he dreams of the girl named Yoonji. When she died, we see someone strangling him, and it's the driver. He is crying, and then throws our protagonist into the river. He tells him, you're the one who finished her off. The moment our protagonist falls into the river, he wakes up, and it's morning. He sits up in bed and looks around the room. Then he puts his hand on his face and sees the clock showing 12:05. He tells himself, I have to go to the professor's house. He gets dressed and leaves his house, quickly running to make it on time. On time, he crosses the street, but suddenly stops. He looks at the little girl, walking with her mother, and a number appears above her head. It's 2.5 hours. This is the last moment of her life. Our protagonist is surprised how this thing appeared in front of him. He thinks he has to go to the professor's house now. At the moment, the traffic light turns red. The girl's mother looks beside her and finds our protagonist standing in front of them, catching his breath. She asks him who he is, and he says, could you give me a moment? I'm a doctor, and it seems your daughter's condition is not right. May I take a look at her? The mother is surprised and tells him, of course not. My daughter's health is fine. We just came back from the hospital, and they said there's no danger. Our protagonist tells her, I just want to take a look at her. She replies, I told you she's fine, and if you keep insisting like this. But before she finishes, the girl calls out to her mother and says, Mom, my tummy hurts so much. The mother asks her what's wrong, and the girl answers, I don't know, but the doctor was trying to give me a shot. Our protagonist notices that the girl is pointing to a spot on her belly. He approaches her and says, You are a very beautiful girl. What's your name? The girl tells him her name is Seo. Our protagonist continues, Seo, can you tell me exactly where it hurts? Seo points to the exact spot of the pain, and our protagonist knows it's the spleen. He touches her on the painful spot and says, Does it hurt when I press here? The girl screams loudly in great pain. Everyone gathers around them, and our protagonist realizes that the girl has internal bleeding in the peritoneal cavity due to the spleen, and if she's bleeding this much, then her life is in very grave danger. He can't believe it, but this is the second case he's encountered, with a number appearing above people's heads, and maybe this is indeed the last period of a person's life. Our protagonist asks the mother which hospital they were at, and she replies, We were just at an orthopedic surgery clinic. They told me that she had a small bruise after she fell down the stairs at daycare, and the doctor told me that there's nothing serious. Can you tell me if something is wrong? Our protagonist thinks that this girl has a ruptured spleen because of that fall, and if they act fast, she might live. Here, he remembers the girl, Yoonji. His thoughts are interrupted by the little girl saying, Mommy, I'm dizzy and feel like I'm going to fall. Our protagonist checks her pulse while the mother keeps asking him if her condition is serious. Our protagonist feels that her pulse is very weak. Her blood pressure is dropping fast, and if the situation continues like this, she will go into shock. He tells her mother, Ma'am, you must take her to the hospital quickly. Her life is in danger. Our protagonist thinks, while frantically waving for a taxi, that in the girl's condition, she won't stay alive until the ambulance arrives. He thinks about where the nearest equipped hospital is so that they can perform a splenectomy operation. The mother and daughter get into the taxi, and here our protagonist remembers and gets in with them, saying, Take us to Cyan Hospital quickly. We now go to the professor's house where he is setting up a game. Suddenly, his phone rings, and he sees that our protagonist is the one calling him. He answers and says, You're on your way, aren't you? My wife is preparing the soup right now. Park tells him, I'm sorry, Professor. I'm with a patient who has a ruptured spleen. The girl is 5 years old, and her blood pressure is dropping fast. She is cold, sweats and dizziness, and she's vomiting. It's likely that she'll need an emergency splenectomy. Splenectomy, quickly. The professor asks with concern, What's her blood pressure exactly? He replies, It's dropping to around 60, and she could lose consciousness at any moment. The professor continues, This situation is very serious. She could go into cardiac arrest. Where are you now? Our protagonist replies, We're in a taxi now. I couldn't wait for an ambulance because her condition is very critical. The professor is surprised and asks him, How did you know her blood pressure reading? He gets flustered. Our protagonist, when he checked her pulse, says he was a senior doctor. He had gained experience in checking blood pressure without a device, but he gave the professor a very close number. He wonders how he's going to explain this. And here, he hears the professor's voice saying, If you can't explain this, focus on the girl's condition. Where are you heading? Our protagonist feels that the professor has a sixth sense and can read minds. He answers him and says, We're heading to the emergency room now at Cyan Hospital. But if I stop to explain everything at the hospital, it will take a long time, and this girl might not stay alive. So could you please call someone from there? The professor says, Park, there is nothing more important than saving a patient's life. You did the right thing. I will call someone at Cyan Hospital right away. Don't worry. This patient will stay alive. Our protagonist hangs up the phone, and suddenly the girl's mother screams and says, Seo is bleeding. Our protagonist realizes there's blood in the urine, and this is a serious thing. because another organ has ruptured and the kidney has started to fail due to the damage it sustained. So our protagonist asks her if she knows the blood type of her daughter. When the mother answers yes, my husband and I have the same type, but it's different. Our protagonist is shocked as soon as he hears this blood type because it's one of the rarest types in the world, and the number of people who have this type is 30,000 people in the whole country. Here, our protagonist opens his phone and dials 114, which is the emergency number in Korea. After a while, the taxi arrives at the hospital, and there are doctors and nurses waiting for them with a gurney. Our protagonist gets out of the car and says, the situation is urgent. Her blood pressure is dropping significantly, and she's in hypovolemic shock and needs surgery immediately. The doctor tells him, yes, don't worry, we will take responsibility. You can wait outside. Our protagonist shouts at him, this situation is dangerous. Can't you hear me? She needs surgery very quickly. The bleeding is due to a ruptured spleen, and she also has signs of kidney failure. Her urine is full of blood. The doctor says, we need to do some tests before we start the operation, right? And until now, we don't know her blood type. So our protagonist tells them her blood type. The doctor continues, in that case, we need to get blood quickly. And here a doctor comes out from inside the hospital and says, what are you doing standing there? Do you want the patient to die? The doctor, with the girl, is startled and says, Professor. The professor tells him to move away, looks at the girl, and then kicks the doctor, saying, you won't know if it's poison or medicine until you taste it. Prepare the operating room quickly and call the anesthesiologists. The doctor says, but professor, this patient's blood type is rare. It will be very hard for us to get this blood. Our protagonist replies, no problem. I talked to the blood bank on my way here. We go back to the moment our protagonist was talking to 114, and at that time, he told them to call the blood bank because there was a very urgent case, and they indeed put him in touch with the blood bank. Here, our protagonist explains to them the condition of the girl and her blood type, and we return again to our protagonist, Park, who bows before the professor and says, please, professor, try to save Seo. The professor looks at him and says, you're Park from Myeongseong Hospital, aren't you? Our protagonist says yes. The professor continues, Professor Hyun called me and told me you're an intern. Frankly, I'm jealous. It seems Professor Hyun has a very distinguished student, and that student is very much like him. Anyway, we'll take it from here. Don't worry. The doctors rush, and the nurses take the girl inside the hospital, and our protagonist stands outside, looking at them. Suddenly, he sits on the ground and says, I was able to save her this time. Time passes, and we see our protagonist and the girl's mother waiting in front of the operating room, and our protagonist thinks that 7 hours have passed, and according to his expectations, the operation is a major one, involving a splenectomy and repairing the damaged areas. And now, the operation will finish. And indeed, the doctor comes out of the room, and the mother asks, how is my daughter, doctor? He replies to her, it was a difficult operation, but she endured it very well and is now fine. The mother thanks him, but the doctor tells her that she should thank our protagonist because he was the one who was able to diagnose her condition and acted quickly. Our protagonist is flustered, and the mother says, sir, if you hadn't been there, my daughter would have been in a dangerous situation. Thank you truly from the bottom of my heart. Our protagonist says to himself, for 20 years that I worked as a doctor, no one ever thanked me in this way. After our protagonist leaves through the hospital door, the professor calls out to him. Our protagonist looks at him and says, thank you, professor, for your effort. The professor replies, don't mention it, but I have a question. How did you know the girl had an injury and a rupture in her spleen? He answers, our protagonist, that there was blood in her urine. When this condition appears in children and adolescents, it's usually due to infections. Even if blood appears in the urine, you can't determine that there is a rupture in the kidney, for example, or in another place. And here the professor tells him, someone who is not an old surgeon and has great experience can't diagnose in this way. Park tells him, I always study real cases. The professor continues, what cases? Studying is not enough without experience. Our protagonist looks at him as if he's speaking without real understanding of the situation and says, if you deal with a patient from a principle of knowledge, that's one thing. But when you deal with them from your heart, that's something else entirely. The professor looks at him, smiles, and says, I didn't expect to hear that from anyone other than Professor Hyun. Anyway, you were able to save this girl with your correct diagnosis of her condition, and you took the right measures at the right time. Work on that experience to become a skilled surgeon and save many people. The professor walks away, leaving our protagonist stand and thinking about his words. And if he is indeed a surgeon, will he be a good surgeon and save people again? The next day, at the hospital, we see Juno standing with our protagonist and asking him, tell me honestly, what happened yesterday? Why did the professor ask to see you in the morning? Tell me the truth. Our protagonist remembers when he met the professor, Hyun, in the morning in his office. At that time, he told him that Professor Kim from Sion Hospital was saying nice things about him. And of course, Hyun was very happy because his friend was saying things about his student, that they were good. Our protagonist remembers them sitting together, that this professor wasn't laughing like this before. But this time, he's not distant, but happy to know our protagonist. He wants them to meet at his house and have lunch together and play Go. Juno yells at our protagonist to answer his question. And our protagonist knows that Juno is worried after the wrong diagnosis he made in front of the professor, and that he's very worried if the professor talked about something related to him in front of our protagonist. So he answers him, don't worry, if you're asking about your issue, the professor didn't say anything about you. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go. Juno gets angry and grabs our protagonist by the jacket, saying, are you crazy? Just because the professor paid you a little attention, you get arrogant? You think the whole world is yours now. Don't you think that whatever you do, you can change anything? You will always be a subordinate, nothing more. Our protagonist grabs his hand and twists it. Juno continues, in pain, let go of me. Are you crazy? Park replies, Luki, Juno, you may have gotten into medical school because of your rich family, but I had to study from my friend's books because I didn't have money to buy those books, and I didn't take anything from my family. Of course, it's not something to be proud of, but in reality, I have nothing to lose. Right now, I can break your arm and go back to the hospital I used to work at. And if you don't like that, what do you think of a medical malpractice charge? Nice, isn't it? Juno is flustered and scared of our protagonist's words, who continues, didn't you treat a patient with an aortic dissection as if it were just bruises? Because when medical negligence can cause death, then there will be a prison sentence of 5 years or fine of up to 2 million, right? Juno says, what do you mean? The patient had an operation and is fine. This story is over. Our protagonist replies, squeezing Juno's hand. What do you think if I convince that patient to file a lawsuit against you? To true, I won't be safe. But who stands to lose more? In the end, Guna says, all right, I get it. I'm sorry, and it won't happen again. Park adds, well, as long as everything will be fine, I'm happy. We'll be seeing a lot of each other in the future. I have to go now. Our hero walks away, leaving Guna behind, feeling wrong by what he said. A month later, in the surgery department, our hero is standing with his friend, Jisoo, who says, it's strange. So he asks him, what do you mean? Jisoo continues, that guy named Guna, he's been acting so quiet for a month. He's even avoiding us. Did he do something wrong? Park replies, maybe. He decided to become a man who thinks rationally. Jisoo tells him, if that's the case, then maybe when I'm bored, I can have some fun with him. Just then a doctor calls out to them, hey interns, if you're free, come quickly to the emergency room. Indeed, our hero and his friend go to the ER. There are many ambulances and injured people getting out of them. The injured people have tattoos on their bodies. We see the emergency room is now filled with gang members. Of course, folks, on August 17th, 98, a huge battle occurred between the Jisan organization, which is a gang with nationwide influence, and their battle was with the Doki gang. The Doki gang was growing and expanding, and of course, in the battle, they used weapons of various kinds. The Jisan gang managed to win in the end, but the result was a massacre We see the medical staff in the hospital, running with the injured, to the emergency room, and the cars keep stopping and dropping off the injured. We see the police. An officer speaks to Dr. Sung and says, "Doctor, the leader of the Jisan gang. Who is Jean? Is he with you?" Inside, "This person is very dangerous, and we need to be with you." Sung replies, "Absolutely not. You can't come in while I'm treating him. You have to stay outside." The officer continues, "Don't you know who this man is?" Sung tells him, "I may not know him, but from my point of view, he's just a patient who needs treatment." The officer gets annoyed by Sung's reaction and yells at his men, "Listen to me carefully. You will block all entrances and exits in the hospital. If even one of them escapes, then I won't let you continue in the police force." He tells him, "Don't block the entrances. We have work to do." Sung enters the emergency room and looks at everyone. Suddenly, he hears one of the resident doctors saying, "What are you doing? You're just an intern, dealing with a patient with a lung injury? Have you gone mad?" Our hero replies, "This patient was stabbed in the lung. If we leave him on his right side, he'll die." Instantly, he yells at him, "The doctor, how can you say that?" Sung approaches them and says, "The intern is right. How can you place a patient with a tear in his left lung on his right side? He's already relying on his right lung to breathe. If you do that, then the blood will go from the torn lung to the healthy lung, and the man will suffocate on his own blood. Focus and do your job properly." The doctor says, "Yes, sir," and runs to another area. Sung continues, "How can a resident like you perform worse than the interns? Anyway, you were excellent in handling this situation. I'll take it from here. Go now and see the patient with the leg injury. His condition isn't critical, and you can start his treatment right away. By the way, you haven't chosen your specialty yet, have you? You seem very well suited for the emergency department. What do you think?" Our hero laughs and thanks him for the compliment. Suddenly, they hear one of the gang's men yelling and saying, "Do you want to die? If anything happens to our boss, I'll wipe you off the face of the earth. Hurry up and treat him." Jisoo replies, "But I can't handle his condition. I'm just an intern, and there are doctors who specialize in this field." The man continues, "Then go and get a doctor quickly. Understand?" Our hero looks at the patient and recognizes that he's the gang leader, Jean. "Here," Jisoo says. "The thing is, the surgery professors are at a conference today, and the rest of the professors are in the operating room." The man grabs him by the shirt and pulls him, saying, "Is that so? Where's the operating room? Come with me, so you can get them out quickly." Our hero comes and stands in front of him, asking him what he's doing. The man replies, "Are you a doctor too? But you look like this kid." Our hero looks at Jean and remembers that if he stays in this condition, he will surely die. His remaining lifespan appears above his head, 2.5 hours. He points. The gang member points at our hero and says, "If you can't save him, then get ready to join him." So our hero says, "Don't worry, I'll save him." Our hero remembers from his past life that the gang leader Jean had a chest injury, and that's what caused blood to collect in the sac around the heart. Then pressure built up on the heart, and at that point, the heart couldn't pump blood, and his pressure dropped. And because of the wrong procedures from the doctors, he died that day. The doctor who made the treatment mistake. The gang turned his life into a living hell. And that's why our hero decided to save this patient to protect his friend. The gang member approaches our hero and says, "Wait a minute. Who are you? Are you a senior doctor or an intern?" So our hero tells him he's an intern. So the man gets angry and is about to hit our hero and says, "Are you taking people's lives lightly? Get your boss here now." But before he hits our hero, a person comes and grabs his arm and tells him, "That's enough, Minshur. There are people here older than you. How dare you act this way?" Minshur looks at him and says confusedly, Chung, sorry. "Doctor, I apologize on behalf of all of them. Could you please save my brother?" Our hero is startled and tells him that it's no problem and that he will do his best to save him. He sees that this Chung is a man he can reason with. Chung says, "No, I don't want you to do your best. I'm saying if you want to keep wearing that white coat, then you must save him." Our hero replies, I'll save him at any cost. Chung looks at him. He tells his men to leave, so the doctor can focus. After they leave, he says to our hero, if you don't mind, Doctor, I'll stay here and watch. Our hero agrees. His friend Jisoo comes and whispers to him, have you gone mad? How can you say you can save him? This is madness. At least, call the doctors in the ER. Park replies, get a grip, Jisoo. Do you want to die? For real. Even the attending doctors in the ER don't know much about thoracic surgery. And can't you see they're all busy too? We have to act. He continues to himself. If we want to get help, by force we can get it. But my chance of succeeding is much greater than their help. Here he stands. Jisoo slaps himself and says, if we're going to die, it's now or later. Tell me what you want me to do. Our hero replies, first thing, give the patient fluids to increase the pressure. This patient has a cardiac tamponade, and we must increase fluids to expand the right ventricle and also to reduce the pressure inside the pericardium. We must increase the filling pressure. Jisoo wonders since when our hero became so skilled. It's as if the spirit of Professor Hyun is inside his body. And here, our hero snaps him out of his thoughts and says, what are you doing? Move it. After they start his treatment and his condition stabilizes, Jin's condition, our hero says, it seems his blood pressure is starting to rise. Good. We'll drain the blood from the pericardium with a needle. Jisoo is shocked and says, what did you say you're going to do? Chung notices their conversation. Our hero says, since blood has collected in this area, we have to insert a catheter and drain the blood. Jisoo says, and who doesn't know that? I know, but there's no ultrasound machine, and we're not practicing on a dummy. This is a human, an inexperienced intern. Can't do this. It's impossible, unless you're a professor with 10 years of experience. And here our hero smiles, because his friend, Jisoo, doesn't know that he was a great doctor in his past life and has vast experience. So our hero says, well, the doctor you're talking about, where are we going to get him from his save? This man, I don't think we can. Let this man die. Can we? Jisoo replies, fine. But even if the ultrasound machine was available, it's very difficult. Park continues, I'll handle it. You go get the needle and catheter. Right now, of course, if you want to continue in the medical profession with your hands intact. Jisoo is frightened by his words, because this gang might really do that to them. And he agrees to our hero's request right away. A little later, Chung is standing to the side, and hears Jisoo saying, this is impossible. He approaches them and says, what's going on? Is my older brother okay? Park replies, yes, he's out of the danger zone now. Chung is happy and thanks our hero and says, Jisoo thinks to himself, pericardiocentesis. That procedure requires one to insert the needle right next to the heart. If it's done incorrectly, it can be fatal. A procedure like this can't be done by an intern. Never. But Park, his skill is like a professor's. Exactly, and maybe even better. Our hero says to Chung, it's not over yet. His condition is still unstable. That's why we need to take him to the operating room to perform surgery. Jisoo approaches him and whispers, are you crazy? What surgery? Who's going to do this surgery? Park replies, so you're going to leave the catheter in his chest. Go get a gurney. Jisoo continues, if anyone finds out, then there's going to be big trouble. Chung interrupts them, saying, Doctor, are you confident in what you're doing? Our hero answers, please, leave this matter to me. Chung continues, all right, please, take care of my brother. After Jisoo brings the gurney, they take Jean to the operating room. But suddenly, a doctor calls out to them and says, stop right there. What are you doing? Well, aren't you going to answer? Our hero and Jisoo stop, without speaking. With him is Professor Hyun, who says, that's enough, Dr. Han. Han replies, Professor, this man wants to destroy the hospital. Hyun says, Park, tell me, the decision you made just now, was it the best thing for the patient? Park replies, yes, but I was just preparing everything. And then I was going to call you to ask. I'm sorry for the delayed response. Jisoo is shocked by our hero's reaction and apologizes as well. So Hyun says, all right, give me a brief report on the patient's condition. Han gets angry and says, Are you going to let this slide? If the director finds out, he'll go crazy. He ignores him. Hyun ignores him and asks our hero if he inserted the catheter into the patient's chest and drew blood from that point. Our hero replies, yes. Hyun continues, you did that without an ultrasound? So Park replies, I'm sorry, but the circumstances didn't allow it. Han tries to speak, but the professor interrupts him and says, Dr. Han, instead of just standing there, how about you come and take a look? It seems the accuracy of this procedure is much higher than if someone had used an ultrasound machine. Han is shocked and approaches the patient, pats our hero's shoulder, looks at the catheter, and is surprised how they managed to insert it like that. And here Hyun says, this action was timely, but as of right now, leave this to me. Our hero replies, of course, Professor. The situation was beyond our control, and it's because you weren't here, and I'm sorry if I caused any concern. He walks away. The professor walks away and tells Dr. Han to come with him. So Han walks behind the professor, looking at our hero out of the corner of his eye, and says, Jisoo, I thought we were in big trouble, but what's your story? When did you learn to insert a catheter? Park replies, when you were sleeping. Jisoo continues, so weird. So you dig up corpses from a grave to practice on them at night? I feel like something strange is happening. By the way, you said you were going to do the surgery, but surely you didn't intend to do it, right? You were surely going to call the professor, weren't you? Our hero looks at him, seriously, pats him on the shoulder, and tells him, after thinking about it for a bit, I don't think I stitched the wound very well last time, because I was tired, but I'm glad everything turned out all right. And anyway, there's no need to dig graves and pull out corpses, since there's something to practice on right here, right? And our hero runs off and leaves him. So Jisoo runs after him. Immediately after hearing that crazy talk from him, time passes, and we see our hero standing in front of the hospital room. He enters, and inside are Jean and Chung, who says, welcome, doctor. Boss, this is Dr. Park, who saved your life. He's surprised. Our hero is surprised by the way Jean is looking at him, and Jean laughs. The one who saved me is here. Please come in, doctor. I wanted to stand to welcome you, but I'm sorry, I can't. Our hero replies, no, please. Stay in bed. You can't move around much. Jean continues, I heard from Chung that if it weren't for your quick actions, I wouldn't be alive right now. So he tells him that he did what he had to do as a doctor. So Jean replies, I really want to repay this favor. If there's anything you need, please ask and don't hesitate. So our hero tells him that the most important thing is that he is okay. You are a man of virtue. You're really something, Jean said. You are an amazing doctor. Is there really no material thing I can offer you? You're a rare person these days, and I can't live while I'm indebted to you. Chung, bring it. Chung goes and brings a box, giving it to Jean, who gives it to our protagonist. He says to him, please, doctor, accept this gift from me. It won't be enough to repay my debt to you, but consider it a small token of my gratitude. Our protagonist takes the box, puzzled. He opens it and finds a gold watch inside. Jean continues, I don't know much about gifts, but I heard this watch is a Rolex, and it's a limited edition. I also heard it's made of 24-karat gold, and its interior is made of real diamonds. Our protagonist is shocked. This watch costs as much as a house, maybe more. Jean says, I don't think anyone in this country has a watch like it, and I will be very happy if you were the first person to wear it, doctor. Of course, you won't embarrass me, right? A little later, our protagonist leaves the room and looks at the transmitter. Inside the room, Jean says, that doctor wasn't bluffing, was he, Chung? Right? Chung tells him he wasn't bluffing. We go back in time for a moment to when Jean offered the watch to our protagonist, who answers him, of course I won't embarrass you. Jean says, laughing, ah, good, I'm glad you like it. Don't worry, it's genuine. Park replies, it seems very expensive, but I can't accept it. Jean asks him, what are you doing? Didn't you say you wouldn't refuse my gratitude? Park continues, of course, I'll accept your gratitude. I've already accepted it just by you being alive. And well, that's the greatest thanks and the best reward you can give me. My goal is to be the best doctor who saves people, and this is not an easy thing. That's why. Please, help me by getting better quickly. Here, Chung tells him, you really are a doctor like no other in the world. You seem very skilled, but I'm worried that someone might deceive you in the future. You still have a long way to go. And we return again to our protagonist, who is about to cry over the watch, but he is convinced it was for the best, that he didn't take it because this gang might be involved in theft and smuggling, and if he had taken it, someone could have blackmailed him later, then his life would be over. In any case, he might not meet that man again. And elsewhere in the hospital, there are two nurses talking about our protagonist who performed the catheterization, and that he was about to take the gang leader to the operating room, but Dr. Han stopped him, and that now he thinks he's a professor. All because Professor Hyun considers him his best student. Here, Jisoo approaches them and says, where did I put my pen? Has anyone seen it? They get flustered. The nurses and one of them says she doesn't know. The second one tells him that she has to go to change a patient's dressing. The first one follows her under the pretext that she's going to change the fluid for another patient. After they leave, Jisoo says, after all we did to save him, people consider us monsters and traitors. What do you think? Our protagonist replies, it's strange. Then Intern, who did something reckless, would gain praise from it. Jisoo continues, so you knew about this talk, but did what you did anyway. Our protagonist thinks that when he was here, his atmosphere was strange because of cunning. Man started to move. So Jisoo tells him that Professor Hyun was looking for him and that he should go quickly because there might be something good he wants to tell him. Our protagonist goes to the office of the professor who, after welcoming him, says, it seems there will be a disciplinary committee after the recent incident. This is my fault. I tried to handle this matter, but it seems there's no way out. I was reckless and shouldn't have caused embarrassment for Dr. Han in front of everyone. I'm sorry. Our protagonist replies, no problem. If I have to face the committee's proceedings, I'm ready. Hyun continues, how can a young man like you remain so calm? Aren't you ashamed in front of me? Anyway, I'll do my utmost. You prepare your explanatory report. Our protagonist thinks that the professor is a man of great character and high abilities, but because he lived a righteous life, always he couldn't see the work that happens in the dark. And as for Han, he is one of those who work in the dark and doesn't lose against Professor Hyun's methods. And he says, don't worry, we will face this matter together. So our protagonist replies, telling him he'll prepare himself. Now we go to the restaurant and see Han sitting there thinking that the chairman of the disciplinary committee is Dr. Seol, who is the head of the internal medicine department and is considered a person appointed without competence. So reasoning with him is not easy. And if he asks him for something, there will be weak points and Seol will exploit them. At that moment, someone enters the room. So Han stands up to welcome him. But this man tells him, sit. Why are you standing? You're supposed to sit back down. Han says to himself, this is the vice chairman of the committee, who is the head of the general surgery department, and one of the most senior professors, Professor Shim. If I can win this man's support, everyone respects him for his character and skills, and he has no enemies, and the hospital director trusts him, then the committee will be entirely in my pocket. He says to Shim, it's been a long time, Professor. We haven't met. Please, the food here is excellent. Shim replies, before we start eating, there's something I want to clarify. Soon there will be a review of the questioning method. Isn't that right? And for you to meet us privately before you are appointed as a professor is not a good thing. Han tells him, that's right. I just felt it was a bit improper that I couldn't treat you to a meal before. He continues to himself, considering it this way, this is good because this person has principles and the man values procedures and stability. So he will surely support me. Han asks him if he has heard about the incident that happened a few days ago and that one of the interns was involved in it. Time passes and we return to the hospital in the lecture hall, and one of the doctors says, now we will begin the 45th meeting of the disciplinary committee. The subject of the meeting is Intern Park from the Department of Thoracic Surgery. The matter is related to the unauthorized treatment of patient Jean. The patient was admitted to the hospital on August 17th, 98. Dr. Park, please come to the podium. Park goes up to the podium, and Han is looking at him. With hatred, our protagonist adjusts the microphone and says, "Starting now, I will reveal the details of the incident, exactly as they happened. On August 17th, 1998, at approximately 10 a.m., a patient, Gene, was admitted to the hospital in critical condition. His body was covered in stab wounds and cuts. He was almost unconscious. And on top of that, his blood pressure had dropped sharply, and his circulation was affected, which caused his skin to become pale. His pulse was very fast, and he had shortness of breath. This is what made me suspect he had cardiac tamponade due to the trauma." One of the doctors says to his colleague, surprised, "Ow, is this man just an intern?" His colleague replies, "Yes, indeed. Usually, when someone stands on the podium for the first time, they are nervous and stumble over their words. But he is worryingly calm, and his diagnosis is perfect." The doctor presenting the committee report says, "Please review the medical records in front of you. In Park's case, there's no error in the diagnosis." The doctors agree with his words, and the doctor continues, "Now, we will begin to hear the questions." A doctor raises his hand and says, "I am Dr. John, head of the neurosurgery department. The point I want to address is that even if the patient had cardiac tamponade, it's very difficult to justify an intern performing a pericardiocentesis on it. According to the medical records, a syringe was used without the use of an ultrasound machine. This is a procedure that should not be taken lightly at all. Even experienced specialists consider it one of the basics. An error could have occurred, damaging the lungs. Could you please explain this point?" Our protagonist looks at him and says, "Of course I will explain that. The symptoms of cardiac tamponade in patient Gene started at 10:30 a.m. At that time, all the medical staff were busy with other patients. On top of that, the professors were in the operating rooms, and no one was available at all from the doctors to perform an emergency procedure on the patient." He bangs on the table here and says, "No, there must have been specialists or a fellow. They could have handled the situation. And even if not, he should have been transferred. The patient should have been transferred to another hospital. How dare an intern perform this procedure? I mean, you're not even a resident, just an intern. A little knowledge is a dangerous thing. This reckless behavior could have caused a major medical disaster, and we cannot remain silent about it. He must be punished to ensure that nothing like this happens again." Dr. Shim says, "Dr. Han's words are correct. This incident created a problem in the system and discipline of the hospital, and we cannot allow this to happen again. But shouldn't we hear the story from Dr. Park?" Han is shocked by Shim's words, and we go back to the time when they were both in the restaurant after Han told him about the incident. Here, Shim says, "You mean Park?" Han replies, "How did you know? But you just got back from America." Shim continues, "It's true I'm old, but I still have eyes and ears, and everyone in the hospital knows him." "Me too." Han tells him, "Well, since we're talking about the subject, I don't think we can remain silent about this incident. How can an intern perform a surgical operation? Just thinking about it gives me chills. And if we remain silent, the entire structure and procedures of the hospital will collapse. And to maintain stability, we must address this problem immediately." Shim drinks from his glass and says, "What a cheap method. I mean, even animals protect. They're young. How could you stoop to insulting your colleague in the same department?" Han gets flustered and says, "No, that's not it. I was worried that this incident would harm the reputation of the hospital." Shim replies, "I looked into the matter, and the procedure was quick and very appropriate. But you're assuming medical accidents that didn't happen just to destroy a talented person. He's a colleague from another university. Shouldn't we help him and stand by him instead of bringing him down? And by the way, after what he did, Park is far ahead of you." Han asks him what he means, so Shim answers, "Last night, Park came to me. He was feeling remorseful for his reckless decision. He also felt guilty that you all got involved because of him. I understand what you're saying, and I know you're worried about the hospital. But this hospital has many people, and all our colleagues are our second family, and we must ensure that something like this doesn't happen again. And if you don't have a heart or empathy, how can we trust and work with you? I'll pay for my own meal. Goodbye." He stands up Dr. Shim stands up and leaves, so Han grabs the glass and smashes it against the wall. And we return together to the committee and Dr. Shim says, "Continue, Dr. Park." Of course, Han is surprised. How did our protagonist get close to Professor Shim? Here, our protagonist says, "As Professor Han said, I thought about transferring the patient to another hospital, but the patient's condition worsened severely, and he would have had a heart attack in about 30 minutes. On top of that, his men entered the operating room and threatened to bring surgeons by force from the operating rooms. And so the matter wouldn't escalate and become an incident bigger than this. I had no choice but to act." The doctors discuss among themselves that this is a reasonable excuse, and that in this situation, there was no way to solve it, the problem, except as our protagonist did exactly. And also, the medical procedure was excellent, and he acted with wisdom and outstanding skill, and that they can't believe that he is an intern. Han gets angry and screams. He's an intern? Who does he think he is to diagnose by himself? What nonsense. He should have waited instead of acting recklessly. Our protagonist replies calmly, "Even if that led to the patient's death, you're right. As confident as I was, it's not my right as an intern to act on my own, and I deeply regret what I did, and am ready to be punished humbly. But if I had done nothing, the patient would have died with a 100% certainty." Our protagonist continues in his head, "Whatever your plan is, I won't let you do what you want." At that moment, the bald doctor says, "Wait, the session is not over yet. Dr. Kim, please distribute these documents to those present." We see the doctors reading the papers, and we learn that our protagonist met the bald doctor before they entered the committee and gave him the papers. When we see Jisoo reading the written words, and the report is about the supply of illegal cardiac stents by the Juho Company, which is a supplier company for medical equipment. And here the bald doctor says, "Now we begin the second topic of the meeting, and I see, Dr. Han, that there is no need for you to sit. Please come to the podium and explain your position to us in detail." And with that, our episode today has ended, and the password for today's episode is Han. Don't forget to like and share, and leave your best comment, guys. And whoever hasn't subscribed to the channel, hurry up and subscribe.